Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are cracking open a real classic, Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking.
Yeah.
But we're not just looking at the general philosophy. Our goal is to pull out the actual usable instruction manual that's kind of buried inside.
And, it's really crucial to understand how the author framed this. We're talking the 1950s.
Right.
This isn't just generic self-help. He is very specific. He calls it a practical, direct action, personal improvement manual. And it's rooted really heavily in applied Christianity.
Okay, so it's got a specific framework.
It does. And the promise is super tangible. He's offering spiritual techniques for, successful living. The goals are peace of mind, improved health, and a never-ceasing flow of energy.
So that is our mission for you. We are skipping the high-level theory and extracting those specific, actionable, spiritual formulas. The author basically promises these exact, repeatable techniques can produce what he calls a victorious life. So let's treat this like an operator's guide for the anxious mind.
I like that.
So Peale's starting point is that without humble but reasonable confidence in your own powers, success and happiness are, well, they're just impossible.
Yeah, he really hammers on that point. The inferiority complex, that lack of confidence, is the main barrier.
And he says it comes from childhood, usually.
Almost always. He says these deep-seated feelings usually stem directly from unresolved things from when you were a kid.
And what's so fascinating is how this complex doesn't just make you shy or something. It can actually drive these really destructive behaviors.
Oh, absolutely. The example of the executive is perfect. He was brilliant, but he couldn't be trusted.
Why? What was he doing?
He was habitually divulging confidential company secrets.
Wow. Why would a successful person risk their entire career like that?
Well, the book argues it's a subconscious compensatory mechanism.
Yeah.
I mean, his core feelings of inadequacy were so strong that he was constantly trying to boost his own ego.
So by sharing secrets?
By sharing secrets, he proved he was on the inside. It gave him a temporary hit of self-importance.
Okay, so if that's the diagnosis, this subconscious need driving bad behavior, what's the immediate cure? What's the technique for someone who feels paralyzed by doubt?
He gives this amazingly simple technique to a businessman who felt, in his words, utterly sunk by worry.
And it is simple, isn't it?
It's surprisingly simple, which is why the author stresses the precision of how you apply it. The formula was to repeat an affirmation from the Bible.
I can do all things through Christ, which strengtheneth me.
That's the one. But the key wasn't just the words. It was the timing and the frequency.
Right. He had to say it at specific times.
Exactly. Multiple times while walking, several times after getting into bed, 3 times the second he woke up, and then 3 more times right before his big meeting.
So it's a conscious effort to just inundate the mind. You're shutting out everything else.
Total inundation. That's the idea. And it leads right into his other point on repetitive suggestion.
Thought discipline. I remember the story of the salesman. He set up a physical system for this.
He did.
Yeah.
His performance was suffering because of these nagging insecurities. So he installed 2 clips on his car's dashboard.
Because his car was his office.
Right. And on those clips, he put little cards with confidence concepts. The insight was that while driving, his mind wasn't just empty. He realized he was actually drinking fear and defeat thoughts.
Wow, what a phrase.
Isn't it? So by reading those cards, he used a physical structure to literally force his mind in a more constructive direction.
He built a physical barrier against his own negative thoughts. That's brilliant. Okay, let's pivot a little. What about people who are beyond doubt? They feel utterly defeated, lost a job, financial ruin, that kind of thing.
Yeah, where everything feels like it's been swept away.
The usual advice is to analyze what went wrong. Peale says, do the opposite.
He does. It's called the asset list technique. The book talks about a man who felt he had lost everything. So instead of focusing on his debt or the bad circumstances, the solution was to list the undeniable positives that were still there.
And what was on that list? It must have been short.
You'd think so, but it was striking. A wonderful wife, devoted kids, good friends, his own integrity, good physical health.
So the core things.
The core things. Plus, living in the United States and his religious faith. The insight is so important. The defeat victim sees all the facts through discolored attitudes.
So you're not changing the facts, you're changing the lens.
Exactly. The fix is just regaining a normal view, which he says is always slanted on the positive side. You have to actively counter that negative slant.
Okay, so once you build that foundation of confidence, Peale identifies the next big enemy of our energy and peace.
Worry.
He calls anxiety the great modern plague.
And he doesn't just mean emotionally. He calls worry the most subtle and destructive of all human diseases. He even links it to physical ailments.
Like arthritis, right?
He specifically says arthritis can be caused by dammed-up anxiety and long-held ill will.
So if worry is basically a poison, how do you detox? He has a very strict two-step process for this.
He does. You're supposed to do it right before sleep. Step 1 is emptying the mind.
You literally visualize it.
You visualize your worry thoughts flowing out as you would let water flow from a basin, and you say an affirmation out loud. With God's help, I am now emptying my mind of all anxiety, all fear, all sense of insecurity.
I love that anecdote about the man on the cruise ship.
The SS Lorelei.
Yeah.
Every night at sunset, he would go to the back of the ship and just visualize dropping all his worries overboard into the ocean.
A daily ritual. But you can't just leave your mind empty.
No, that's the dangerous part. You can't leave a vacuum. So step 2 is immediate, refilling the mind.
What?
With thoughts of faith, hope, courage. And to help that along, he recommends what he calls suggestive articulation.
Which just means speaking peaceful words aloud.
Right. Like verses from the Bible. He says, doing so physically calms your nervous system.
Yeah.
On the flip side, if you say a bunch of panicky words out loud, you actually create physical tension in your body.
The internal state follows the spoken word. It makes sense.
It does.
And that ties into energy, too. The book has this whole counter-narrative to burnout culture. It says it's not hard work that drains you.
It's emotional upheaval. That's the culprit. A sound spiritual life, he says, prevents energy leaks.
So how do you stop the leaks? He talks about finding God's rhythm.
I love that concept. He uses an example from an industrialist who noticed that the best workers, the most efficient ones, they harmonize with the rhythm of their machine.
And the machine itself is an expression of order.
Yes,
Okay.
an assembling of parts according to the law of God. When you work in that rhythm, instead of fighting it, you don't get tired. It's the resistance that causes exhaustion.
That feels very intuitive. Fighting the current is always more tiring. What about for people who are just stale, creatively, professionally, just stuck?
Yes. The unique prescription for the professor.
Tell us about that.
So there was this brilliant academic, but he was losing his teaching ability, just felt burned out. His bosses gave him a 6-month leave with full pay, but there were very firm rules. He had to spend time outdoors, chop wood, fish, and read the Bible. That was it.
The goal being
To saturate his mind with the great words and ideas. It completely cured his staleness because it disconnected him from his source of tension and refilled his mind with something foundational.
That idea of actively refilling the mind seems to be the core of everything, which brings us to the final section, the most active techniques.
Prayer.
But he defines prayer differently, not just as asking for things.
No, he calls it a scientific procedure for the release of spiritual energy. It's an action, a process.
And the techniques are so specific. The first one is picturizing.
Yes. After you pray for a goal, you have to print a picture of it on your mind as happening, holding the picture firmly in consciousness.
The example for this one is intense. The woman trying to save her marriage.
It is. Her husband wanted a divorce. But she didn't just pray for him to come back. She would sit at home every night and picture him there.
What does she picture specifically?
She pictured him sitting comfortably in his old armchair or drying dishes with her, puttering around the house happily, as if nothing was wrong. She visualized the desired outcome, not the problem. And the book claims that mental image eventually actualized itself.
Okay, the second method is maybe even more radical, flash prayers.
This is from a guy named Frank Laubach. It's a method of this continuous high-energy engagement with the world as you're just, walking down the street.
What do?
You shoot quick, silent prayers or thoughts of goodwill and love at every single person you pass.
Just a quick mental projection.
Exactly. And he noticed that people would often smile or seem to react positively. He described it as an emanation of a power like electrical energy. You're actively projecting good energy out into the world.
Let's just pause on that for a second. The idea that a quick thought of goodwill can generate a tangible energy that makes a stranger smile, that's a huge leap.
It is.
That takes this whole thing from internal self-help to like an active interaction with reality on a different level.
It's really the ultimate expression of the entire belief system. What you affirm and visualize is true, and it will actualize itself.
And to help with that, the source gives a very clear 10-point list for overcoming inadequacy. We don't have time for all of them, but let's hit the big ones.
Okay. First, formulate and stamp on your mind a mental picture of yourself succeeding. Don't just hope for it, see it.
Okay.
Second, depreciate every so-called obstacle. Minimize them in your mind. Third, don't be awestruck by other people. He says most of them are as scared as you are.
And there's one final affirmation.
The ultimate one. Repeat it 10 times a day. If God be for us, who can be against us?
That attitude about minimizing obstacles is key. It brings me back to that golf analogy he uses.
Oh, yes, the golf ball in the rough. You walk up to it and instantly feel this sense of defeat before you even swing.
Right. The obstacle looks bigger than it is.
Exactly. But if you actually get down and look at the lie of the ball, it's often not nearly as hard as your mind made it seem. That feeling that you can't do it is only mental. Once your mind is convinced, your body's powers are released, and you can hit the ball cleanly.
What a perfect summary of the whole philosophy. This deep dive has really shown how these specific, repeatable spiritual techniques, from asset lists to flash prayers to finding God's rhythm, are all prescribed as practical tools.
They're not just for abstract faith. They're for increasing confidence, stability, and energy in your day-to-day life.
And the ultimate takeaway seems to be
That the world you live in isn't primarily determined by your outward circumstances. It's determined by the thoughts that habitually occupy your mind. Change the thought, you change your world.
And that leads us to a final, provocative thought for you to consider, and this comes straight from the source. The author claims that if you practice these principles for just 1 week, especially the one about filling your life with love and giving it away through acts like those flash prayers, you will be surprised by the beginnings of real happiness. Just 1 week.
So the question for you is, what small, deliberate, positive act drawn from this dive will you commit to today just to test that theory?